All right, well, the clock here says it's 11:30 on this computer, so we're going to go with that. All right, so I'm Debbie Tauschek, Mrs. Tauschek on the schedule. I am the middle and high school math teacher at Faith Lutheran School in Plano, Texas. I'm really curious to know who you are. So I'm not going to go around the room or anything like I would in the first day of school, but I'm just curious, who has been to a CCLE conference before? Okay. And who teaches any subject in a school setting, not in a homeschool setting, in a private or public school? Okay, so most of you. All right. So teaching truth in mathematics. Let's just get started. First, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction of who I am. Here's my family. Oh, it's really low. And of course, my dog. It almost looks like my dog is my favorite part of my family. He probably thinks he is. Okay. Oh, that was my husband and 2 children, by the way. Okay. My resume. I graduated from a small college in Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin in 2008. Second career, I have my Wisconsin State teaching license. I then was headmaster at Christ Lutheran Academy in Kenosha, and then from there moved to Faith Lutheran School. And then I just in December got my Master's of Education from Concordia, Austin. Okay, so truth table. When I first saw the title, Teaching Truth in Mathematics, this is the first thing that came to mind, because this is truth in mathematics. This is logic. This is not what I'm teaching on, so you don't have to be. I just put that in there. Okay, so why teach truth in mathematics? Go to my notes. So, let me go. Why? Okay. Our culture has become, I mean, everyone here knows it very well. Our culture has become way too subjective in, well, with life, with truth in particular. Redefining marriage, redefining gender, redefining everything. There is no truth in our culture. So it's important that we have truth in every aspect that we can, and especially in math. When I looked up, I just Googled teaching truth in mathematics just to see what would happen. An article by NCTM, National Council for Teachers of Mathematics, in April of this year, 2017, there was an article they had titled, Discover Truth in Mathematics. And the article was all about the students themselves discovering their truth, which is really that's our public schools today. It's all about group learning and putting people together to kind of discover the truth. I read one article that a group of students working together came up with a wrong answer for a math problem, but they got a good grade because they worked together, they used their social skills, and they reasoned it out. But it was wrong. So we need to get away from that. That's just silly. Let's see, we need to learn the truths that have been given to us in the past in order to move forward. Okay, so from theory to practice. So my presentation today is going to be, I'm going to start out a little bit theory, and then I want to go into mostly practice. And the practice is just going to be, I'm going to show you how I do it, how I teach middle school, high school math class, well, specifically middle school. Kind of taking that truth to practice. Some of my knowledge has come from research, and some has come from experience. I don't have all the answers, but I definitely love searching for the best way to teach. First, a little bit about my research. Then in the second part, then as I said, I'll show you how I accomplish truth in mathematics in the classroom. So in December, my final research paper was actually on consistent use of timed tests. This was my thesis. Well, it was my thesis. Consistent use of timed tests will increase automaticity and confidence at every level and grade in mathematics. In my research and in teaching math, I was coming across so many articles by people who were actually saying that drilling math facts is bad. In fact, one quote I had is, mathematics facts are important, but the memorization of math facts through times table repetition, practice, and timed testing is unnecessary and damaging. They say that it takes away, that it kills any love for math or learning that could be there. I think quite the opposite. I think it gives an opportunity for the student to show what they can do. Okay, the thesis for my final research project is right there. I had 3 hypotheses throughout my research. Next. The first one was that students in varying levels in elementary and middle school make fewer mistakes with other math problems when they can recall math facts quickly. The second one, students who practice math timed tests every day may have a greater confidence in math skills than their counterparts. That's what I was mentioning to begin with, is that confidence that I can do this. And then my third hypothesis was that students who practice math timed tests every day may have greater automaticity in math computation than their counterparts. It's that confidence, it's that building, you can then move on to the next level. So I really focus on that math facts every day. We do it at the first part of every class. So math facts is teaching truth. The students learn the facts first, then are tested daily on them. It is in this truth that students gain confidence in upper level math, where they will apply their knowledge to continue learning truth in mathematics. And just the beautiful truth it is. So in my classroom, I use the Saxon math curriculum. I brought my, this thing is really awkward, but just is. Tomorrow I'll wear a belt. I brought course 2. Course 2 is what I use in 7th grade math. It is the traditional, that meant for 7th grade. I know the older version at my former school was 76, I believe, math, 7.6, yeah. At Faith, they've upped it and are now in the courses. Other materials I use, the assignment sheets. So I am, along with teaching truth and maintaining that structure, I model everything the same way every day so that we have the repetition, the students know what to do, know what is expected. I think that is just, that's crucial. And so I created, but I also took from Saxon Math's idea of, they all have, this is what all of the students do their math assignments on. These are my math sheets, we call them, or assignment sheets. So they can do the work here, labeled number 1, and then over here they can just write the answer. So that when I'm grading, I can just look right down the column and it goes very quickly. And then if I want to see how did they come up with that answer, or just double check that if they have the right answer, we'll do a spot check just to see that they actually worked that out, or to see that they followed the pattern instead of just found the answer and copied it. I also use whiteboards and dry erase markers in my classroom. Every student has a small whiteboard that they use at their desk. It also has a graph on the back. So when we get to that point in 7th grade, there's quite a bit. I think graphing is introduced about halfway through. So we can do either one. Right after we start every day with a mental math. Right after that, we well, we have questions, and then we go into the instruction. And as I'm teaching, I'll explain a little bit, and then I'll have them practice it on their board, and they all have it. And sometimes I'll have each one show their board when they have the answer. Sometimes I'll call row by row, depends on how confusing it gets. Try to keep it orderly, but sometimes it's too much. If I see that there are, 5 wrong answers in a row, I think, okay, put your boards down. We have to redo this. Let me explain this again. Oh, yes. This year, I had 14. Yep. Yeah. What else? Rulers or straight edge. Saxon Math calls them straight edges. I use the term straight edge, and at first the students are, what? Well, okay, it's your ruler, but if you don't have a ruler, use anything. Use another piece of paper or something thick enough. Use the board, but use a straight edge. It's important that you have that for the graphing. Compass, protractor, scissors, they need to have all of these. Not every day, but at least with them. Additional aids as needed for reinforcement or enrichment. Sometimes, about a third of the way into the year, maybe even a quarter of the way into the year, I find who my students are who just aren't following at the pace that they should be. And so I might give them a different, the Saxon Math has reteaching worksheets in them that you might be familiar with if you're familiar with Saxon. I'll give them the reteaching and a few problems from the book. I'll lessen the assignment for them, but it's just different. And then for enrichment, I might just give them, if they finish their assignment very quickly, I'll give them other things to do. 2 years ago now, I had a couple of students who were far beyond, they needed to be doing other things other than what we were doing in the classroom. So they made, I had them work together and they made manipulatives for the lesson. So they made posters and different, they did a little puppet show thing with fractions. Just all kinds of different things. And they just loved it. They had such a good time. They made I can't think of the word, a scrapbook of different math concepts, and it was neat. I also have a timer. I'll show you my timer in just a little bit. Okay, so I kind of hinted at, this is my typical math class. I start with the power up. Thank you. I start with the power up, and I suspect most of you, if you don't use Saxon Math, you're at least a little familiar with it. This is one of the power ups that I brought today. This is power up I. So it's a little bit, probably not quite halfway through the year. It's find the number that completes the proportion. So you have 3/4, for example, the first one is 3/4 equals A over 12. So the idea is that they just find it, through cross multiplication, they find that missing one. Okay, then we go through, they do that, then they open their books to the mental math for that particular lesson for the day. Mental math is just at the top here, and it's just a few, 7, 8, 9 problems that are meant to be done very quickly. My first few years of teaching, I had a group of students, at my former school, who did this just very quickly, and I almost at times felt like it was a waste of time because they just, I can do this. This is real simple. But it's that automaticity that we really encourage, and I think that has been they just gained from doing it every day. In fact, my son said to me, my son is just graduated high school, and he was in my class 3rd through 8th grade. I taught him math. And so when he was in high school, I remember at one point when he was in high school, he was bragging with me at home about how fast he could do some calculations. And I said, well, you know why that is? I said, that's because you were drilled every day because we did the mental math every day. He said, no, it's not. It's just because I know that. Okay, sure. Okay, then so they work on the mental math. There's also problem solving. Now, those students who are very quick, can go through this very quickly, will do the problem solving. At Faith, where I'm at, of the 14 students I had last year, there were only about 4 students who would consistently get to the problem solving and finish it. If I had more time, I would take the time and wait for every student to do it, but really, we just worked until the last student finished the power up, the mental math or the math facts. So those last few students, I guess they just focused on these and didn't get the problem solving, but that's just one of the bad things about having only a 40-minute lesson or 37 minutes together. Okay, then we go through and we check the mental math. We check on their papers. They had filled everything out on their paper. The mental math and problem solving is all done right on here. We check it. They hand it in, and I record it. I tell them that I only record the facts that they do. What's important is that I'm comparing their results with themselves. I'm not comparing it with any other student. And the first part of the year, there were a couple boys in there who were constantly, I got this, I'm done before you. There's always that competition. And when it comes to the math facts, I tried very hard to stress, when you're done, just quietly move on. I don't want anyone else to know how you're doing. And in some of the research that I found, there was one paper I read where the author was very adamant about if you're going to do mental math or kind of drill every day, that the student knows that they're only competing against themselves, against their time or their accuracy. The charts on the wall that shows how well all the students are doing and who has accomplished what, yeah, not so good. That's going to, I would think that would be the part that would decrease their self-esteem, and we're all about self-esteem. Yes?
I have a question. My sister's kids go to a public school, and I was visiting them this summer, and it seems that there's a really big push towards writing in math these days in the public school, and really being able to verbalize and write how you put that answer, or everything has to have a sentence.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to problem solving. So, what do you think about that?
A lot of Saxon math has that also. Has a lot of the writing. I think it's good. It's another. It's one thing to know. It's one thing to say that 3 + 4 is 7. But it's another thing to be able to write out why, or to write out, it just gives another level of understanding. So as much as I am, I guess that would...
Because I know in Saxon math in the lower grades, because I teach kindergarten here, but I've also taught 1st grade and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So and I just see it's so different. And in my experience, I really don't feel like the problem solving work of Saxon sometimes really prepares them for those power-ups, because my students, in my first year of teaching here, was 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I really didn't feel like they hated the power-ups. They hated the problem solving. They hated having to write the sentence. So how do you? Because I feel like it kind of that really learning how to talk about math and really explain math in words kind of lacks in the lower grades, it seems.
Oh.
In the 3rd grade curriculum, it comes up maybe once every 2 weeks. There's a special lesson when they're done with their Friday assessment. That's a problem solving, but it's, at least when I taught it, and this was 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was pretty sporadic.
I did not know that. I have only taught middle and high school. But that would explain a lot.
And that's why your kids are probably only 4 of them are getting to that.
Yes.
And I believe it's because the Saxon math is kind of lacking. I love the Saxon math, especially in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And like 1st grade and stuff, when I taught it, I thought, wow, it was so user-friendly, and I think the kids love it, and they get those concepts, and when it comes to the drilling of the facts and stuff, but there's more to it, you know? And then I wonder how prepared the students are, because I think future, you know, I think of what are they doing their ACTs and SATs, and, you know, when it comes to.
Well, that's far future.
So.
Yeah. I had a conversation this past year with my students as I was kind of finalizing my research paper, doing some of my research for the paper. I just had a conversation with my students about that. I asked them, what do you guys think of the power-ups? What do you, and they didn't seem to mind them so much, but what seemed as a whole was that majority of them enjoyed math younger. They don't like it now. And I just took it because there is so much more problem solving and they don't like, they just want it to be this, then this, then this. It's not, so either they don't know, and now it sounds like that's.
Well, I see it here, and I'm seeing it here. I'm going into my 7th year of teaching here.
Okay.
And I see it where K through 2, it's awesome. And then all of a sudden when the 3rd graders get that textbook, you know, and it's not so much the worksheets that we work with in the lower grades, that's where they kind of stop and the love just kind of changes.
Yes, yep.
I feel that 3rd and 4th grader is where it just kind of, they lose it. Even with my own daughter who's not going to 4th. Yeah,
Okay.
So.
I'm so glad you said that, yes.
You know what I think happens is you have the worksheets in kindergarten through 2nd grade, and so you're doing the power-ups. The 3rd grade teacher quits doing them.
Right.
See, I've heard
But
that.
they have any for 3rd
And they
grade, do
don't.
they?
Oh, they absolutely do.
Oh, because we don't have it.
They're in a teacher resource book. They have.
Every year, yeah.
Algebra.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
all the way through, because I've taught
Yeah.
3rd grade through 8th grade in Saxon. They're there. And the same thing with the problem solving at the beginning, most of the teachers don't do it.
See, it's so important. Yeah.
At the 2nd grade, the 2nd and 3rd grade, you can still do with worksheets instead of the book. But teachers are tempted on that test day to skip that problem solving. You can't, because in
By
about
the time
3
everyone's
days.
done, then your class period
No,
is over.
I always did a second day.
Yeah, that's what I would do too.
And because if you don't, in about 3 days, that's gonna show up in their daily lesson.
Right.
And then you're gonna end up teaching it too long individually anyway. So I think what happens is a time constraint.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I taught course 1 and course 2 last year. I teach multiple grades. I've got 3 grades in the classroom. I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
So what I started doing was a lot of times doing just the star problems. And I would pick out the ones that I knew that they were struggling with and the ones that I knew that they needed reinforcement on, the new ones. We would do all the ABC.
Yeah.
For this lesson, those are like 10 problems on
Yeah.
this lesson and the star, because they don't have the amount of time to even work to do the whole lesson. And I know what that translates into now. I mean,
How many minutes is your class period? Or was it, or whatever?
that's up to me. I'm self-contained.
Oh, beautiful. At my former school too, we
But not really, because I
Oh.
was self-contained 3, 4, 5 in the morning and self-contained 6, 7, 8 in the afternoon. So I couldn't switch it. I had my afternoon to get through all the math classes and all the science classes
oh,
in one day. And catechism was in the afternoon.
okay, okay.
And, you know,
So I guess there's pros and cons. Yes.
I'd like to corroborate her statement.
Oh,
Come 3rd grade, my daughter, who's now going to be 7th grade, we just started homeschooling last year.
Okay.
Before we sent her to a brick and mortar Lutheran school. Come 3rd grade, Saxon. She absolutely despised math. Despised it to the point where doing math facts,
Yeah.
like 50 math facts, it would normally take a few minutes. It would take her 15 minutes to get through it because she literally agonized over even 5 plus 6, she'd literally sit there for a minute because she wanted to quadruple check to make sure she had it right. And by the time we got her into 7-6 last year in homeschooling in Saxon, it was literally war. She knows it. She just doesn't want to follow through with it because she got tired of spiraling back around and thinking, and it would take her, when she was still in the brick and mortar school, it would take her sometimes 2 hours to do
yes.
30 problems in Saxon, and it would literally be like 15 minutes a problem, and she'd just start bawling her eyes out because she had it in her mind, if I don't get this absolutely perfect, the teacher's just gonna go F.
Well, and how necessary is it really to have 30 problems?
This was
Yeah.
30 problems every night,
Yeah.
5 days.
See,
Yeah, that's.
okay, yeah.
I mean, I think our kids are losing because really, how important is it to have all of those problems?
Right.
But in every different lesson, you're gonna have different shades of a problem, and you need to give them enough repetition of each shade so
Yes.
that they can feel comfortable. So you might have 3 or 4 problems of each shade, but by the time you get in all the shades, it comes to be
I have,
10 or so problems.
I'll tell you some of the things that I've done on that, and we'll just kind of take this conversation here. I started out assigning all 30 problems because that's what they told me to do, and I did. And then but I only graded 15, and I told them that because I had so many, there was no way I could do it all, but it was important that they did the practice. I never told them which 15, it was just a random, whether it's the first 15, middle, whatever. I mean, I would grade all of them that day the same, but it would be different day to day. So I did that for a long time until 2 years ago, I found at Faith, at Christ Lutheran Academy, it was self-contained. So I could spend, one of my students still complains, he would be a senior in high school now, he still complains that I had 3-hour math classes. That's not true, but that's what he says. But I could, if I needed to, spend more time. I can't here at Faith. So I found that I can't give them, well, 2 years ago I had a particularly low math class, 7th grade. And so assigning them 30, like you guys are saying, was just, it killed them. So I just took out I took out 15 problems that pertained to I took the most recent 15 problems. And I just did it that way.
The star.
And right,
You have a star next to the problem.
yes, yeah,
It takes the guesswork out of it for you.
yes. I don't think that's the best way. I think it's important that they do them all, but it's life. I just don't know what else to do. Yes.
Another thing that we found when we went through it and where the problems were, if the teacher the previous year didn't do every single lesson,
Yeah.
you need that. Every lesson in that grade is a prerequisite or something to do.
Yes.
That never happened with us.
And when you keep finding that they're missing the last 20 lessons every year, by 3rd and 4th grade already, you've set them up for failure.
Oh,
And if you're looking at grades, the fact that it's always cycling through, if you're getting a 70%, you're doing quite well. Because they're always shuffling in things that it's your 4th or 5th time practicing it, and you're shuffling in things that are new. So they're mastering some of the problems.
Yes.
Some of them are new, and really it's about 70%. About 70% is mastery and about 30% is new. So if your kid is getting a 70% in Saxon, they're doing fine.
okay.
But how do you tell that to parents and try to explain that to the kids?
Right.
That because 70% are things that are mastery. I did start going over, if you look at the test, before
Yeah.
the test, they do still put the lesson
Yes.
reference. And the week of the test, I would send home with them the list of the lesson references. But the next test we're taking, every question comes from these 20 lessons. And let them go back and look at it and say, do I need to review something about lesson 42? Do I need to review something about lesson 31? And that way I wasn't teaching to the test, but they kind of could go back and review themselves.
Yeah.
But that test is not what you just did this week.
No, right.
That test is something you should have mastered a long time ago.
Right. So it got to the point this year with the tests that I would give them, Saxon math, in case you didn't know. Any of you who don't use Saxon math, they give you an A and a B they give you 2 tests for each part, every 5 lessons. And so I would, their test was A, their B, I gave it to them to take home and as a review. And the last 2 years it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle to get them. And I just really think it's because for some time there, they didn't have that daily, as we were talking about, there are some teachers, and again, when I was doing my research, I asked the teachers, some of the math teachers that have had these students, and yeah, they would admit, the daily thing is, the daily mental math is important, the drills, but I don't have the time. I can't get to the lesson then. Well, I mean, somewhere, I don't know. So I think Saxon math is great, especially if you have an hour, at least. Okay, so my typical math class, this is what I would like it. This is my, when I have 50 minutes to an hour. Okay, so questions from the previous lesson and then instruction on the new lesson. I mentioned we use our whiteboards on that. And I will caution that if you are one who, just know that they're going to draw on the whiteboards also. I just take that as, I just roll with it. As long as it's not disturbing. Once they start drawing and then showing people while I'm trying to teach, then it's a problem and I'll take their board away. But, and I explain that to them. But a few little, drawing while they're listening is fine with me. Yes?
Do they only use the whiteboard in the classroom when you're instructing, or do you have it happens at other times? Do you think that learning to write the problem on paper teaches something different with their, maybe their motor skill or their ability to make straight lines? Is there a difference between using the whiteboard and using pencil and paper?
I would never take away from using pencil and paper. I think that's really important. And I would prefer pencil and paper, but when I have a whole group, this is the easiest way. I think the best way for them to show me that they understand. And I only use it. It's what?
Breaks up the routine.
Yeah, that too.
My kindergartners like to, when we're practicing math facts, they love to see who's the fastest to write the answer on the board and show it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just kind of makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, yeah. And so I only use it at this time during instruction. When we begin the homework, when we get to the point, begin homework, they put their boards away first. Because they had been drawing on it, I don't want it to be a distraction. I don't want them to finish their drawing or whatever they're doing on their board on the side. So they're instructed to erase it, put it away, and if I find that it's not cleaned the next day, they don't get to use a board that day. We just, the small rules with the boards, but. Okay, the power up. I was going to, how long do I have? Till quarter after? 20? Okay. I was going to go through this process, but it seems you guys know so much about Saxon math already that I don't really need to. I'll show you my timer that I use, though. This should link to my timer. Nope. Okay. I like this timer just because it is just so large, and I have my data projector is on the ceiling, and so the whole room can see it. And I have it right. It took it completely away.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there are times when my data projector is not working, so I'll show you what I do then. I just turn my computer around on my podium, and because it's so large, everyone can see it. Yeah, it's just an online stopwatch, just a free app. And it's very helpful. I also use it for a lot of other things. I say, I also teach history. So at the start of a history test, I'll give them 5 or 7 minutes to study. So I'll put the timer on. Okay, you have 7 minutes to study. Here we are. And then, so I use the timer I love that timer, for a lot of different things. Okay. Then we go into the mental math, which I already kind of discussed. There we go. Okay, I took the time though and put out for this particular lesson, I was going to do using formulas and distributive property, lesson 41 in section 2. These are the mental math. This is what they're expected to just be able to do just very quickly. Whether it's, they should use things that they've learned in the past. This is that bringing up what you've learned, I guess, in the past. Knowing that this could be, or changing the numbers, increasing or decreasing, making it easier to multiply. Knowing that what's happening here in layman's terms is you can just move the decimal point over and make it 15.4, using things that they would have learned already. There's the explain. Explain what the mode is in a set of numbers. It's that using words also along with the math. Okay. Problem solving. I put the problem solving up here. I mentioned only a few of my students get to it, which really bothers me, but that's, again, it's a matter of time. So in a homeschooling situation, I would take the time to do all of these. It's just really important. It strengthens all around. And then direct instruction. Let's see. Oh, with my class, with my students, as I'm teaching, I try to stress that whatever the topic is, typically in sex and math, really, this is not new. So using formulas and distributive property, this is not new. These are truths or things they would have learned already. It's just putting the words with what they've been doing. They now have, for distributive property, I think that I can, okay. I don't give examples, I guess. When you're given, we've talked about area, for example, of a rectangle. They know that area by this point is length times width. So now I'll just say to them, okay, now this is one formula. You know the word. So it's applying that terminology. Pastor Keyser talked a little bit about yesterday when he was his talk on teaching truth in math and science. He talked about using the truth or putting what you want the students to learn right away, maybe up on the board or something, but using that right at the beginning so the students know. So I might say today we're going to learn about formulas, and then that's when I would back up and say, not scary, you guys know this. And actually for every title in the book, just about every title of the book, I'll write it up on the board and we'll break it down. Okay, you know this, right? What does this word mean? Okay, so you know that. And then I try to make it so they can equate it to something that they already know, that this isn't scary. Because so many times, you look at words you don't know and so many people just shut down at that moment. So I try to relate it to something else. Okay. I would prefer to assign all 30 problems. Again, it depends on my students, it depends on the class, the particular class. I prefer to do all 30. Bless you. Then I put in here to walk around the room and answer questions. What I end up doing is standing at the front of the room and answering questions because there's just so many still. And then, the assessment. We already talked a little bit about the assessment. And it wasn't the whole year that I gave A when I saw the grades starting to decrease a little bit, especially on the tests as a whole, then I gave them A as the review, B as the review. And really, maybe only 1 or 2 students would do it anyway because it's extra work. Who wants to do extra work? But there were some students, the 4 of the lowest students that I had, who I had kind of backed up a little bit in the lessons, that was their assignment, was the review. I don't know, trying to figure out. So I guess if we can just talk more about things that have worked with sex and math or things that haven't. I kind of gave you how I do things. What do you guys use? Do you use Saxon at home?
I don't. We use Rodman staff, which does have some downsides because it is reformed. So there are some theological issues and the problems, but I like that they do a lot of the mental math orally. But I have one student, and so that works for me. So I can do what's 5 times 140 orally, and there's a list of 10 oral mental problems that we do. But it's set up very similarly to Saxon. So, but a lot of oral.
Okay, which would be, that would be great.
It would be, but it's not possible in a classroom setting.
No, no, it's not. Yes?
One thing we found at our school was that we could alternate between even and odd problems in our Saxon. We have the old Saxon, we don't have the,
Okay,
but we could actually have them. Today, if it was lesson 1, we did odds. If it was lesson 2, we did evens.
okay,
And we just alternated that, and we never missed any of the skills or the practice. It never happened. There was never one type of problem that got left out.
huh,
Not ever. And therefore, it wasn't 30, it was 15.
right.
Which for ours was much easier to handle. We never got done. And I mean, they'd have hours of homework. And we're getting to the point where they didn't like math.
Well, so the students,
And then, if you had kids who struggled, you could go back and do the odds. Or you could go back and do the evens.
oh, I see. Yeah, I like that. I had my students grouped in the classroom. If they realized this was happening, they didn't say anything. But I had those students, my stronger math students were in the back, so that as I'm teaching the lesson, I know that they're getting it. I know that they could just read it and do it, and so I let them. I never said that, but I also didn't. I just let them work on it. I knew what they were doing. I could see what they're doing. So for them, they have no trouble doing the 30, and I thought that was good practice for them to always, to constantly be reminded of what was happening. It was, and then those 4, my 4 lowest students, I gave them different problems anyway, so they did only do 15. And then there were my middle group that they did all 30, and it was rough. But they stayed after school sometimes with me, and I worked, I think, harder with them. In fact, I remember during one math test, I had one student asked me, he was asking me very specific steps. He clearly did not know how to do this one problem at all. And I told him, I'm sorry, I can't help you. To try to give him one thing to begin with, just a little hint. On the other side of the room was another student, asked me a very similar question, essentially, how do you do this? And I'm sorry, I can't help you. Then the first student called me back again, and I went over, and he had worked it out, done all kinds of things. It was all wrong, but I could see his thought process. I could see what he was doing, and so I took the time and I sat with him and I tried to correct where he went wrong. The second student called me back over, and he asked again to help him. He had done nothing on his paper. He just sat there just staring at it. And I said, I can't help you. He said, but you just helped him. Yes, because he was helping himself. He took the time to try to do it. And I just walked away from him. And so I think there is that too. There is, for those students who just are like middle of the road, they're not the lowest, they're not the highest, and they're, as long as they're showing that they want to do the work, I'd love to help them even more.